Hello, I'm attorney Chuck Grainger with Grainger Legal Services. I'm a lawyer that's in Montgomery, Alabama. In our firm, we have offices in Montgomery, Prattville, and Troy to service this Montgomery division that we're in. I'm here to talk to you at this time about credit card help and maybe what options are for people that are overloaded with credit card debt. It really doesn't matter how it happens. Sometimes it happens because you're helping family members, or maybe you lost a job and you were having to survive and you accumulated some debt. But there are various options for paying credit cards or for dealing with credit card debt, and you need to be responsible enough to look into those options and make a judgment about what you really need to do. And oftentimes there may be other problems besides credit card debt that you need to consider as well, and develop an overall financial strategy for how you deal with your debts. One way of doing that would be to consult with a bankruptcy attorney because we're knowledgeable about not only bankruptcy but how debt works, and sometimes some lawyers at least will give you advice on what your non-bankruptcy options are. I want to talk to you a little bit about non-bankruptcy options. I have some other videos if you want to learn about bankruptcy, but your non-bankruptcy options are something you ought to think about. You know, if somebody's on disability and they can't have their disability garnished, and they really don't own any property for the sheriff to come and sell to pay a debt, or maybe since they don't own any property, they're not worried about their credit or judgment liens being placed on them, then perhaps they're judgment proof. And oftentimes people who can get a judgment against them but the creditor still can't force them to pay anything, if they're judgment proof, maybe their option is to do nothing and quit worrying about it. But obviously if you can afford to pay some of what you owe, then try to do that. But if you really can't, if you really honestly need the income you have to live on, and you don't have anything left over to pay on your debts, then you need to be real about that. And you need to look for some sort of debt relief, or you need to make sure you're judgment proof. Again, that means that you're not working and they can't garnish your paycheck. They're not going to garnish your bank account maybe. Or they can't put judgment liens on you that matter to you. And you don't have enough property for the sheriff to sell. Those are the 4 ways they generally will collect on a judgment for a credit card. Now, there are various things that have emerged over the years, many of which are scams, dealing with debt relief for credit card debt. It is possible to do debt settlement, but usually that requires that you, to be honest with you, have to come up with about, the way we do it is you got to come up with about 65% of what you owe. And that's not usually something you can do, but maybe a family member or a friend can help you with that. I've seen that happen. And sometimes a debt settlement strategy is appropriate for people. You do need to be aware, though, that if a creditor decides to forgive some of your debt, that they will probably send a tax form to you in January or February, and you're going to have to pay taxes on what was forgiven. So seeking a voluntary forgiveness of debt through a debt settlement is not usually as good a deal as people think it is. And I know I've heard ads on the radio saying that we'll settle for pennies on the dollar, and all that's a bunch of garbage. And in fact, if you're dealing with anybody over the internet on a debt settlement, you're probably being scammed. You need to deal with it in a way that's legitimate, which means it may not be a good option for you unless you can get all that money together at one time. That's my view about debt settlement. I've never seen one work. I've never seen, unless it was done properly by having all the money at one time. Now there's another option that people pursue, and those are called credit counseling agencies. Now credit counseling agencies can be kind of tricky. One problem with credit counseling is that usually they're going to set you up on a payment plan with your credit cards. And the good thing is that credit counseling does tend to work better with credit cards than it does, say, small loan companies or signature loans, that sort of thing. But with credit card debt, most of the credit card companies will go along with a nonprofit, credit counseling-based payment plan. What that involves usually is that you get a reduced interest rate. It usually ranges between 8 and 10% interest. But you do have to pay it in full. The biggest problem I see with it is that they really don't come down on the payment. You really have to pay the same thing you would have been paying if you were paying your credit cards on time. It's just that by getting you a lower interest rate, it does pay it off over a shorter period of time. Unfortunately, it's still a long time to pay it off, but maybe it won't be 25 or 30 years long. So it still might benefit you in some respect if you can pay all the way through. Very few people pay all the way to the end of a credit counseling plan. And in my experience, the worst credit scores that I've seen when people come in to talk to me about bankruptcy are people that have been in credit counseling plans. And evidently the credit bureaus must not be too optimistic about the effectiveness of credit counseling plans. In our area though, we do have an excellent credit counseling agency if you want to consider that. The Montgomery Consumer Credit Counseling, they seem to me to be people of integrity. And I really wouldn't deal with anybody else if I were you and you're in the Montgomery area. Hopefully, if you're not in the Montgomery area, that you might be able to find one that is legitimate. But so many of them are not. And so many of them will bait and switch you. And certainly avoid dealing with credit counseling agencies that you find over the internet. Other possibilities of dealing with credit card debt may be to go to a bank or a credit union and get a debt consolidation loan. Oftentimes those loans are at lower interest rates than what you would be paying on credit cards. However, those are very difficult to obtain. Usually you have to have a credit score over 700 and your debt to income ratio must be in line with what that bank or credit union is looking for. There are a couple of options in our area where people can go, and I can talk to them about that if they were to come in and talk to me about it. But anyway, of course bankruptcies are options as well, and it may take that if it's really out of control. If you're just struggling, but you believe that you can handle it or almost handle it, you may be able to use a non-bankruptcy option to address the problem. But if it's a bigger problem, if you owe a lot of money and maybe you really need the money you're making to live on, then you probably need to look at a more decisive action, such as a bankruptcy case, and get a fresh start, or at least get into a payment plan that you can afford in a Chapter 13 case. You really need to just talk to a lawyer about that and evaluate it. Most of the time, I don't know, the lawyers in our area don't charge people to come in and just talk to them about their situation and get advice. That initial appointment, at least around here, is for free. So I would encourage you to consider doing that. If you want to do that with us and you want to make an appointment to come in and let us look at your situation and make recommendations to you, you're welcome to do that. We actually take text messages on our main telephone number, so if that's convenient to you, just text us, or you can give us a call. Our number is 334-260-0500. Now I hope this has been helpful to you, and I do hope you find your way to the right solution for you, but I do encourage you, if it's serious enough, that you consult with an attorney. Here at Grainger Legal Services, we like to help people like you get out of the hole. Thank you.